I never thought I'd see the day my own parents dragged my grandfather's belongings out to the curb like trash. Designer suits, framed photographs, even the leather chair he used every evening, it was all piled beside the garbage cans, as if decades of his life meant nothing. My grandfather, William, didn't shout or beg. He just stood there, calm, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen, before whispering, 3 days. That's all it will take. Then he walked away. At first, my parents acted triumphant, as if they'd finally gotten rid of a burden. They laughed about taking back our house and dismissed my questions with sharp words. But by the third night, their voices cracked with panic, phones buzzing nonstop, people demanding answers, and neighbors whispering. My billionaire grandpa, discarded like he was useless, was suddenly the one person everyone needed, and I was the only one who knew he hadn't disappeared. He was waiting. When I came home that afternoon, the first thing I noticed wasn't the house, it was the pile. Our front yard looked like a crime scene. Cardboard boxes split open on the pavement, silk ties fluttering in the breeze like discarded ribbons, a broken photo frame glinting in the late Sunday. The frame still held the picture of my grandparents on their wedding day. My grandmother's smile, once radiant, was now fractured by a diagonal crack across the glass. And right there, standing at the edge of the chaos, was my grandfather, William. His shoulders were straight, his silver hair catching the light, but his hands trembled slightly, as if holding back decades of emotion. "Dad, this is for your own good." My father, Mark, snapped, tossing another box onto the heap. Inside, crystal glasses clinked together, shattering as they hit the concrete. "For his own good?" I choked, stepping closer. "You're throwing out his life." My mother, Linda, folded her arms, her face carved in ice. "He's lived off us long enough, Emily. He doesn't belong here anymore. We need our space." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My grandfather wasn't a burden, he was the reason we had a roof over our heads at all. He'd paid for countless repairs, groceries, even covered my college tuition when my parents said money was tight. William's lips curved into a small, unsettling smile. He didn't shout back. He didn't defend himself. He simply looked at my parents and said, with a voice like steel, 3 days. That's all it will take for the truth to show. Then he turned to me. His eyes softened for the briefest second, enough to make my chest ache. "Emily, remember this moment," he murmured. "They think they're rid of me. They're wrong." I wanted to run after him as he walked down the street, leaving everything he owned scattered across the lawn, but my father's voice snapped me back. "Don't pity him," Mark barked. "You'll thank us later." Linda sneered, brushing dirt from her manicured hands. "It's time we lived our own lives without that old man hovering over us." I stared at them, horrified. The sun was sinking lower, painting the boxes in long shadows. It felt like the world had shifted on its axis. They thought they had finally silenced William Riley, my grandfather. But in my gut, I knew this was just the beginning. That night, the house was too quiet. I could still see the pile of my grandfather's belongings through the window, boxes sagging under the weight of rain-soaked clothes, books curling at the edges. The wind rattled a bent lampshade against the curb like a broken bell. Every sound outside screamed of loss. Yet inside, my parents behaved as if nothing had happened. At dinner, my father ate quickly, eyes locked on his plate. My mother scrolled through her phone, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. Neither of them mentioned Grandpa William. I couldn't take it anymore. "How could you do that to him?" I blurted out. My voice cracked, breaking the unnatural calm. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Emily, don't start. Don't start?" I nearly shouted. "You threw him out like garbage. He's your father, Dad. How could you treat him that way?" "He's not my responsibility anymore," Mark snapped, his jaw tightening. "He's lived long enough under this roof. It's time he figured things out on his own." Linda chimed in without looking up from her phone. "You're too young to understand, honey. He was holding us back. This family needs freedom." "Freedom?" I laughed bitterly. "He gave up his freedom for us. He helped pay this mortgage, bought your cars, covered bills when you couldn't, and this is how you thank him?" My mother's eyes flashed, sharp as glass. "You think gratitude means letting him invade every corner of our lives? No, we've done our duty. He's old, Emily. People like him fade away eventually. Better sooner than later. And her words hit me harder than any slap could have. I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. You're wrong, I whispered. He's not done. He's stronger than you think. My father stood, his chair scraping across the floor. Enough. You'll respect your mother and me in this house. His voice boomed, but underneath I caught a flicker of unease. The silence returned, heavier than before. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Shadows crept across my walls, stretching like the doubts in my mind. I kept replaying Grandpa's last words. 3 days. Why 3 days? What was he planning? I tiptoed to the hallway, listening. My parents were whispering in the kitchen. He'll come crawling back, my mother muttered. He always does. And if he doesn't? My father asked, his tone low, uncertain. Then we make sure no one else hears his side of the story. We can't afford questions. I backed away, heart pounding. They weren't just cruel, they were scared. Scared of what Grandpa still had, of what he might reveal. And I realized in that moment, my parents thought they'd silenced him forever. But silence has a way of breaking. And when it does, it's louder than anything. The first day without Grandpa felt strange, like a storm was building, but no one wanted to admit it. His absence clung to the walls. Even the air smelled different, emptier somehow. My parents pretended it was business as usual, but the cracks began to show almost immediately. By mid-morning, the phone started ringing. First, it was the bank. My mom answered, her cheerful voice faltering when the caller asked for William Riley. He doesn't live here anymore, she snapped before slamming the receiver down. Then it was a lawyer. Then a man from some investment group. Then another bank. Each call asked the same question. Where's Mr. Riley? My father's face grew paler with each ring. He barked at my mother to let it go, but I could see his hands shaking when he poured his coffee. By the second night, the calm mask had completely shattered. From my room, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. You said he was broke, Mark, Linda hissed. You swore he had nothing left. I thought he didn't, my father growled. He always made it seem like he was scraping by. He hid things from us. Or maybe he trusted you enough to take care of him, and you threw him away, I muttered under my breath. The third day was when the panic became unbearable. The phone rang non-stop. I peeked at the caller ID flashing across the screen. Private wealth firms, real estate offices, even city officials. Everyone wanted Grandpa. Everyone except the 2 people who had tossed him aside. At one point, my father yanked the phone cord from the wall, but that didn't stop his cell from buzzing. Dozens of messages, dozens of missed calls. Turn it off, Linda screamed, clutching her head. They're everywhere. He's everywhere. I watched her pace the living room, hair wild, her composure shattered. If he exposes us, we lose everything. Do you hear me, Mark? Everything. What do you mean exposes us? I demanded, stepping into the room. Both of them froze. Go back to your room, my father snapped. No, I shot back. Tell me what you're afraid of. Tell me why the whole world suddenly wants Grandpa. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes darted to Linda, then away. Because he's not who you think he is, she blurted. He's not just some frail old man living in our spare room. She stopped, her voice cracking. He what? I pressed, my pulse racing. Her silence was louder than any answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Grandpa's last words echoing in my head. 3 days. 3 days, and the truth would come crashing down. By dawn of the 4th day, the truth had already started to bleed through the cracks. My parents weren't just guilty, they were terrified. And that terrified me more than anything. Because if Grandpa had been playing weak all these years, then maybe, just maybe, he had been hiding something much bigger than any of us ever imagined. And whatever it was, my parents knew it could destroy them. By the 4th morning, I couldn't take the secrets and whispers anymore. My parents had locked themselves in their room, voices rising and falling in frantic arguments. I heard words like accounts, assets, exposure, and once, terrifyingly, lawsuit. I had to know the truth. While they fought behind closed doors, I slipped into the basement where Grandpa had kept a few boxes stacked neatly in the corner. My parents never touched them. They assumed they were filled with useless memorabilia, old letters, and trinkets. But the moment I opened the first box, my breath caught. Inside was a leather folder stamped with the name of a private bank. I pulled out a stack of crisp documents, account statements, investment portfolios, even property deeds. My eyes widened as the numbers registered. Millions in balances, multiple properties across the country, shares in companies I'd only ever seen on the news. I stumbled back, clutching the papers. My grandfather wasn't some dependent old man. He is a billionaire. I kept digging, each box revealing more secrets. Certificates of stock, land titles, insurance policies. One folder contained photographs of skyscrapers with his name on the deeds. Another held trust fund papers with my name written in neat type along the beneficiary line. My hands trembled as I whispered to the empty basement. "He was protecting us, and you threw him away." A sudden creak on the stairs made me freeze. I shoved the documents back into the folder just as my father appeared, his face pale and eyes darting. "What are you doing down here?" he demanded. "I was looking for my yearbook," I lied, my voice too quick. His eyes flicked to the half-open box, and for a second, I thought he would tear it from my hands. But instead, he clenched his jaw and hissed, "Stay out of this, Emily. You don't know what's at stake." "Yes, I do," I shot back before I could stop myself. "You kicked out the one person who held this family together, and now you're terrified because you know he holds the power to take it all back." His face twisted with rage, but beneath it, I saw fear raw and undeniable. I slipped past him and ran upstairs, clutching the folder like a lifeline. In my room, I locked the door and spread the documents across my bed. Every page screamed of a life carefully constructed, hidden beneath the mask of an ordinary old man. It wasn't just wealth. It was strategy, control, legacy. And my parents had been too blind, too greedy, to see it. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, the phone rang again. My mother answered, her voice shaking. "No, we haven't seen him. Yes, if he contacts us, we'll let you know." She hung up and turned to my father, whispering frantically, "They're closing in. He's moving pieces we can't see." I stood in the hallway, documents pressed against my chest, my heart pounding. Grandpa hadn't vanished. He was playing a game my parents had already lost. And now, I was part of it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Grandpa had meant for me to find these papers. Maybe his promise of 3 days wasn't a threat, it was a countdown. A countdown to the moment when the truth would explode, and everyone would see who William Riley really was. Not a burden, not a forgotten old man, but a billionaire who had just been pushed too far. The call came the next morning. I was still staring at the mountain of documents spread across my bed when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emily?" The voice was steady, unmistakable. My heart leapt. "Grandpa, meet me," he said simply. "Downtown. Robert Chen's office. Don't tell your parents." The line clicked dead. I grabbed the folder, shoved it into my backpack, and slipped out before my parents could notice. The city felt different that morning, charged, alive as though it too knew a secret was about to be exposed. Chen's office was tucked inside a sleek brick building near the courthouse. The waiting room smelled faintly of leather and coffee. When I stepped inside, there he was, Grandpa Williams sitting upright in a tailored suit, his silver hair immaculate, his eyes sharp. He looked nothing like the discarded old man I'd seen on the curb 3 days ago. "Emily," he greeted, standing to hug me. His grip was strong, confident. "You found the papers." "Yes," I whispered. "Grandpa, why didn't you ever tell us? Why let them treat you like that?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Sometimes, Emily, people reveal who they truly are only when they think you have nothing left to offer." Robert Chen, the attorney, ushered us into his office. He was a compact man with calm, calculating eyes. "Mr. Riley, everything is prepared," he said, sliding a thick file across the desk. "Shall we begin?" I sank into a chair, clutching my backpack, as Grandpa spoke. For years, William began, I allowed your parents to believe I was weak, helpless, a burden. I wanted to see how they would treat me without incentive, without the lure of inheritance. What I saw, he paused, his jaw tightening, was greed, entitlement, cruelty. I swallowed hard. So all those times they complained about money when you helped with bills, when you covered Dad's debts, you were testing them? He nodded. I wasn't testing their wallets. I was testing their hearts. Robert Chen opened the file, revealing pages stamped with official seals. Emily, your grandfather owns multiple corporations, real estate assets, and liquid investments. Altogether, his portfolio is valued in the billions. The word billions echoed in my ears. Your parents believe they own the house you live in, Chen continued. But legally, it is registered solely under your grandfather's name. He allowed them to live there as tenants without rent. My chest tightened. All those years, all those arguments, my parents had never been owners at all. They'd been squatters in a palace built by the very man they despised. Grandpa turned to me then, his gaze piercing. Emily, you were the only one who asked why. The only one who cared about more than what I could give. That's why I've decided, everything will go to you. I nearly dropped the folder. Me? Grandpa, I can't. You can, he interrupted firmly. Because unlike them, you still understand loyalty. You still understand family. Tears stung my eyes. But what about Dad? Mom? They'll hate me. They already do, he said, his tone cool. Because you represent the conscience they abandoned years ago. Robert Chen slid a pen across the table. Mr. Riley, the transfer forms are ready. Once signed, Emily becomes the legal heir to your holdings. Your children will have no claim. I stared at the pen, my hands trembling. Grandpa placed his hand gently over mine. This isn't revenge, Emily. It's correction. They chose their path when they threw me out. Now I choose mine. I signed. My signature looked small on the thick paper, but the moment the ink dried, the air seemed to shift. Something irreversible had just happened. Grandpa leaned back, satisfied. Now, Emily, let's see how your parents handle the consequences of their choices. The office felt electric, as if the walls themselves understood the gravity of what had been set in motion. I glanced at my grandfather, no longer a frail old man, but a titan reclaiming his throne. And I realized the game had only just begun. When I returned home that evening, the atmosphere in the house had shifted from cold triumph to pure chaos. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. The landline screamed until my father ripped it from the wall. His cell buzzed so often that he hurled it across the room, shattering the screen. My mother paced in frantic circles, her manicured nails biting into her palms. They're saying the deed isn't in our name, she whispered hoarsely, as if the walls might be listening. That the bank records show him. Relax, my father barked, though his voice cracked. It's a mistake, some clerical error. But even as he said it, sweat dripped down his temple. I stood in the doorway, watching them unravel. It's not a mistake, I said softly. Both of them whipped around. What do you know? My father demanded. I took a step forward, my backpack slung tight over my shoulder, still heavy with documents I hadn't shown them. I know the truth. Grandpa owns everything. This house, the accounts, the companies. You were living off him, not the other way around. My mother's face drained of color. You've been talking to him, haven't you? Where is he? I lifted my chin. Not here. Not with you. And he doesn't owe you explanations. Don't you dare take his side, my father roared, slamming his fist on the table so hard the salt shaker toppled over. Everything we have, everything you thought you had, I cut in. It was never yours. He let you believe it because he wanted to see who you really were. And now he knows. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then my mother broke it with a sharp, ugly laugh. So he's punishing us through you. How pathetic. You think you're special, Emily. You think inheriting his scraps makes you better than us? They're not scraps, I fired back, my voice trembling but strong. They're his life's work, and you threw him out like trash. Her smile faltered, rage flashing in her eyes. We did what was necessary. He was in the way, always judging, always reminding us of what we owed him. We don't owe him anything. Yes, you do. I said, my chest tightening. You owe him respect. You owe him gratitude. And you owe him an apology. Apology? My father scoffed, his face red. We don't apologize to a man who manipulated us for years. He should have told us what he had. And you would have treated him differently? I snapped. That's exactly why he didn't. He wanted to know whether you cared about him or just his money. And you proved the answer. The argument spiraled. My father shouted that he built this family. My mother shrieked that I was brainwashed. But beneath their fury, I heard the panic, the desperation of people watching the ground collapse beneath them. Finally, my mother broke down, her voice cracking into sobs. Emily, listen to me. If he cuts us off, we lose everything. The house, the accounts, even the cars. Do you understand? We'll have nothing. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Maybe that's what you need. To learn what it feels like to have nothing like you made him feel. My father lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You'll talk to him, he ordered. You'll tell him to fix this. You're his precious little granddaughter, use it. Save us. I yanked free, tears stinging my eyes. I already talked to him. And you know what he said? You made your choice. The silence after that was suffocating. My mother collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. My father sank into a chair, staring blankly at the wall. They looked smaller somehow, stripped of the power they once wielded. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them. That night, I locked my door, clutching Grandpa's papers against my chest. Their muffled voices carried down the hall, pleading, bargaining, breaking apart. But I knew the truth. Their fear wasn't of losing money. It was of losing control. And they had already lost both. The following morning, Grandpa called again. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word carried weight. Emily, bring your parents to my lawyer's office. This ends today. I hesitated. Are you sure? They won't. They'll come, he interrupted. Desperation is louder than pride. And he was right. When I told them, my mother leapt to her feet, hope flashing in her eyes. My father muttered curses but grabbed his jacket anyway. They were running out of options, and they knew it. The ride downtown was suffocating. My parents whispered furiously in the front seat, rehearsing excuses, arguments, maybe even pleas. I sat in the back, clutching my backpack, my pulse racing. Inside Robert Chen's office, Grandpa was waiting. He looked immaculate, composed, like a man who had never been tossed out onto the curb. My parents froze at the sight of him, suddenly stripped of all their bravado. William, my father began, forcing a smile. We may have acted rashly. Let's talk this through. Grandpa raised a hand. The room fell silent. I'm prepared to offer you one chance, he said. His voice was steady, but beneath it simmered steel. A public apology. Here now. Acknowledgement of what you did, and a promise to change. Do that, and I'll ensure you're provided for comfortably, but modestly. No more luxuries, no more entitlement, just enough to live with dignity. My mother's jaw dropped. You expect us to grovel? To humiliate ourselves? It's not humiliation, Grandpa replied. It's honesty, something you've both forgotten. My father's face darkened. You'd strip us of everything we've built? After all the years we let you live with us? Let me? Grandpa's eyes flashed. I gave you that house. I fed you, clothed you, paid your debts. And in return, you threw me to the street. For the first time, his voice thundered. The room vibrated with the force of it. Linda stood, her hands trembling but her chin raised. We don't need your crumbs. We'll find our own way. Grandpa's expression hardened. Then you'll have nothing. Because everything you thought was yours, every key, every account, every possession belongs to me. And as of today, belongs to Emily. They both turned to me, eyes wide with shock. Emily, tell him no, my father pleaded. You're our daughter. Don't let him twist you against us. Tears burned in my eyes, but I shook my head. You did that yourselves. You chose greed over family. You chose cruelty over love. This is just the result. My mother's voice broke into a scream. We are your parents. You owe us. I owe you nothing, I whispered. Grandpa slid a stack of papers across the desk and signed with a flourish. It's done. The house is already listed for sale. Within weeks, you'll need to leave. The sound of the pen scratching the page was the sound of a door slamming shut. My parents stared at him in disbelief, then at me. Rage, fear, and disbelief tangled on their faces. But beneath it all was the undeniable truth. They had lost. As we left the office, Grandpa placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Remember, Emily, family is proven by actions, not words. And today, the truth was proven. Behind us, my parents stood frozen, watching their empire of entitlement crumble into dust. And I knew, with painful certainty, there was no going back. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Within a week, a bold "for sale" sign stood in the front yard, and strangers walked through the halls my parents once ruled with smug confidence. Realtors clicked photos of polished floors, while my mother cried silently in the kitchen. My father barely spoke at all, his shoulders hunched, his eyes vacant. I should have felt pity, but I didn't. Not after what they did to Grandpa. Not after watching them strip him of dignity, only to discover he had been the foundation beneath their entire lives. On the morning of the closing, I met Grandpa at the lawyer's office one final time. He was radiant in his quiet strength, as though shedding the weight of betrayal had given him new life. "Emily," he said, handing me a set of documents, "this isn't just wealth, it's responsibility. Use it to build, not destroy. Promise me that." I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "I promise." He smiled, kissed my forehead, and then just like that he was gone. Not in anger, not in sadness, but in freedom. He left to travel, to live, to finally enjoy the life he had postponed for too long. Back at the house, my parents begged once more. "Please, Emily, don't let this happen. We'll change. We'll do better." I looked at them, remembering every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every moment they made him feel like a burden. "You had your chance," I said quietly, "and you threw it away just like you threw him away." The movers arrived, boxing up the last remnants of their pride. By sunset, the house belonged to another family, a young couple eager to fill it with love and laughter, the very things my parents had squandered. As I watched them drive off into uncertainty, I felt no triumph, only clarity. Family isn't proven by blood, it's proven by loyalty, kindness, and respect. My grandfather understood that better than anyone, and now, because of him, I understood it too. The world thought they had erased William Riley, but 3 days was all it took for the truth to rise, and once revealed, it could never be buried again.